Our next presenter, I'm really excited to have join us here. In the past 18 months, we have dramatically accelerated the adoption of new technology, for better or for worse. And now that we're all at least partly digital, smart agents, algorithms, and machine learning are taking their place alongside us. But is AI artificial intelligence or augmented inequity? After sleeping through a few fire alarms, Ara Abraham decided tech could create an alerting device for the deaf and hard of hearing community. She's the founder and CEO of Listenin, a mobile app that connects to sounds around you. Please welcome to the Forward 50 stage, Ira Abraham. Hey, good morning. There we go. Hi, how you doing, Ira?
Good. Thank you.
It's great to see you here this morning. Why don't you tell us what you mean by augmenting inequity?
Yeah, certainly. I'd love to go into it. So thank you very much for having me here today. I'm coming from a land of many national traditional territories like the Wendat, the Haudenosaunee, and the Mississaugas of the Credit. So thank you very, very much for the opportunity to connect. So we often live in a society where there's some hidden biases towards certain classes and groups of individuals. So if I were to say, what has come to your mind when you say the word stay at home? Are you thinking about stay at home mom and a dad as career oriented? How about if I were to say the word extrovert? What else is coming to your mind? Are you thinking about somebody who's social and outgoing? An introvert is somebody kind of boring and reserved. So many of us are really unaware of the stereotype that shapes our thoughts. So what exactly are your hidden biases towards people with disability? In 2019, a study was done by the Michigan State University, and they interviewed over 300,000 participants and found that as people get older, they show a higher degree of prejudice towards people with disability. But they have a positive association, almost a public likability towards the group. So it's almost as if they were kind of camouflaging their true prejudice and negative beliefs about people with disability. And this is a huge implication in our society today, especially for the 1 billion people and the 6 million Canadians that are facing some form of physical, economic, and social barrier to fully participate in our society. And of course, this pandemic had really amplified this barrier, not just because the number of people with disability has increased. We've seen a number of people who've got the COVID virus, and they've been impacted both physically and mentally, terminally because of the COVID virus. But the number of people who were unemployed during the pandemic, over 30% of the population who have disability were unemployed. And that's for either temporary and permanently. And then on top of that, artificial intelligence came in and took off really rapidly during the pandemic, as many organizations were really trying to find new ways to automate their business practices. And the industries that employ the people with disability the most, like in manufacturing and retail, are the industries that often adopted AI the most. So the question we need to pause and reflect and really ask ourselves, what exactly are we missing here? What are the hidden biases that are being baked into our AI digital system and into our algorithm? And so you're probably wondering, okay, who am I here to be talking to you? I'm actually somebody who's classified as having a disability. I am, maybe you can say, a hidden disability. I'm hard of hearing and have been since the age of 3. And when I started my business 4 years ago, I wanted to see an opportunity to leverage artificial intelligence to help people with hearing loss gain awareness to sounds in their immediate environment using sound recognition technology. But when I was in these conversations of AI, and the people with disability were practically not even mentioning, and it's very concerning. And so I'm here to say that there's so many wonderful things about artificial intelligence and how it can help people with disability, but only if it's done correctly. And so for this presentation, I want to highlight 3 ways that I see where AI can be really damaging effect on people with disability and solutions that we can implement today. So when I talk about artificial intelligence and AI models and algorithm, I use them interchangeably with terminologies like related to machine learning and deep learning. But when we have an artificial intelligent model, there's usually two components that you have to think about. One is the input and the other is the output. So the input is the information and the data that we feed into the algorithm, and the output is the job to be done, what we want the model to do. And so in between the input and the output, it's this unknown space where we're giving freedom for the model to decide how to get to the desired output. But what we're seeing in practice is the model self-selects on specific variables to get to the desired output. And this kind of has implications when we're dealing with recruitment platforms that use artificial intelligence. So for example, you can look at HireVue. And HireVue is a video interview platform that uses artificial intelligence to help find the job to be done, its ideal candidates for a specific role. And they look at variables like body language and how people respond to interview questions. But this is a platform that is used by many organizations like Goldman Sachs and Unilever, and they had a good intention when they were building this platform because they wanted to bypass the whole resume scanning process. But what they forgot about is people with disability. People with disability are going to enunciate differently. They're going to have different body language in the interview process. And they're going to probably think differently in terms of their answers to questions that reflect their past experiences. And AI recruitment tools overlook people with disability because our data are really outliers. For one, there's limited data sets collected on people with disability, many because of privacy policies. But the other reason is that our data can be quite complex. Even one class of disability, say like vision impairment, for example, you have a whole wide range of experience from somebody who needs a screen reader to somebody who needs a reading glasses. And then you have to look at intersectionalities of people with disability. Some people might have multiple disabilities and other identities, which make the data very complex. And then the other thing that we have to forget is that AI algorithm doesn't fix what happens offline. Like, does algorithm understand to somebody what the meaning of trust means when somebody is with somebody in the context of somebody with a disability? For example, do people assume that they're committed to the role as opposed to being unreliable, as many people would think about somebody with a disability in the workplace? Did the algorithm understand what contribution means? Can the person with disability have an asset to the organization and not be considered as a burden, as many people would assume people with disability? Can the model really understand what support means in the context of someone with a disability? That support is an employment enabler, not a sense of diminished competency, as many people would expect people with disability when they request for support. So we can't exactly expect AI algorithm to select people with disability by itself because of the unique differences. It needs to be built in. And so the second thing I want to talk about is this whole concept of what is a novelty become the commodity. And AI is on that path as well. We're going to get into a world where you're not, as an organization, you're not going to need to have the data to build an algorithm, and you're not going to necessarily need to have the expertise in-house. You can actually go and outsource it off the shelf or get it through third-party solutions. But the reality is that AI models that are going to be readily accessible in the future are going to be built by people with their own perspective of the world and beliefs and assumptions that are going to be built into these models. So these models are going to be widely accessible in our society, not monitored at all, and pretty much unable to control. It kind of reminds me of the COVID virus, right? And really, when these models are not inclusive of people with disability, it's going to further isolate critical members of our society. And this is exactly what's happening today. Because for natural language processing models, NLP, the NLP models are really designed to help to scan for text to see what the meaning is behind these texts and documents. And NLP models are used currently today by many organizations, whether it's in healthcare, education, and even in recruitment for jobs. And in 2019, Google did a study to look at the terminologies that are associated around disability in the NLP models that are widely accessible in our digital ecosystem. And they have a negative and almost bad words associated or meaning behind the word disability. And some of them go as far as describing people with disability as toxic. Is it the kind of world that we want to live in, where people, despite their unique differences, are considered toxic in our digital world? The reality is that developers and organizations are not really thinking about the data that went behind these models and the negative impact that it will have on people with disability. So the third example that I want to bring up is this whole gig economy. The gig economy had been wonderful for many people with disability because now we don't have to worry about the whole recruitment process and finding work and employment opportunity, and they can just go right into getting a role and work and getting paid. But the tech platforms are, the gig economies are run by tech platforms that are using artificial intelligence to help standardize the product and services. So each customer on these platforms will get the same experience each time. So essentially, AI has become the new boss. And AI is forcing people to have to operate in a certain way in order to continue to use these platforms. And there's a new practice or a current practice that's coming into play, and it's called algorithmic recourse. And it's basically suggesting the AI model suggests to people with disability or any other workers that they need to do certain activities in order to get favoritism on the platform. So they're giving suggestions on how you should behave. And essentially, if you don't behave in these platforms, you're going to be banned from further using it in the future. And we spent, as many public service members, we spent so much time enforcing reasonable accommodation and getting that opportunity to help people with disability get equal access in our society. So people can have, who need more time to execute a task, people who might need a little adjustment into the task, what they can do and what they can't do. And then maybe just having access to assistive technology to be able to execute these tasks. And when you have AI becoming essentially the boss, and we're not building in artificial, or we're not building reasonable accommodation for people with disability, it's becoming more problematic. And so Alex Rosenblatt, she did a study with a number of Uber drivers, and some of them were people with disability, and really found that many of the companies like Uber can really justify that drivers are not employees of Uber, they're not contractors of Uber, and they are consumers of their platform. And therefore, as consumers, all the employment laws and regulations do not apply. And this just really goes back to that same argument that we often hear about people with disability, that the cost to support them is just too much to make an adjustment. But the average cost to accommodate an employee by studies, then it's only $500 US. And so even the fact that we've gone digital, as we become a more digitized in our product and services, that cost has also reduced tremendously because now we're servicing one-to-many individuals. But yet the argument of wanting to support people with disability continue to be the same argument, that nobody has changed their attitude at all. So I want to conclude with giving you 3 solutions that I believe that anybody here can do anytime, anywhere. And the first one is really to look at your program and policy to integrate people with disability as much as you can, because studies have shown that the more interaction that anybody that had with a people with disability, the hitting the biases start to diminish, and there's more acceptance, and then we don't have this whole of us versus them mentality. The second thing that I want to suggest is when you look at the AI pipeline, often many people assume that you must have a PhD in machine learning and you need to be able to have an expertise in computer science. But most of the work when it comes to the AI development and the model is that it's the data that requires industry experts so that the job to be done is inclusive. And this creates a great opportunity for us to start to look at employing people with disability in part of these AI development pipeline, because they can add their own personal insights and experiences to ensure that we have an inclusive model in our digital society. And even better, if we can have laws to ensure the accountability towards AI being inclusive for people, especially if the AI model are going to be impacting individuals in our society. And lastly, I want to look at, many of you are going to probably start to look at third-party solutions and borrowing or accessing AI models and algorithms within your digital system. You should really start to question the data that goes behind these models. Make sure that you're questioning whether they have considered people with disability, because it can truly impact your diversity and inclusion efforts. And so, just in keeping in mind of time, I just want to know that we are at a crossroad today. And I truly believe that there's only two directions that we can go today. And one path is really to continue to further augment inequality. But the other path is where artificial intelligence acknowledge the outliers are assets and respected in our society, where the right to participate in our society has meaning, and where equity has value in the current digital economy. So thank you very much for this. And if you have any questions, I'll be available both on social media and back in the other room.